All right, welcome to NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode is on the Minnesota Vikings, and I am joined by a Twitter legend, Thomas Sullivan. How's it going?
It's going well. How you doing?
I am doing good. It's any day I could talk about football is a good day. I'm not quite sure you can necessarily say the same thing about the Vikings this week. What are you feeling? We'll just kind of get right into it with the tough loss to the Lions. How are you feeling? Had some time to kind of settle down a little bit, or?
Yeah, I've calmed down a little bit, I think, but
Yeah.
the Lions are on the up and up for sure. They're gonna win some games now.
Well, yeah, it kind of seems like they've been knocking on the door. I mean, I'm a Bears fan, as you know, and I just them, whether it's them, the Ravens, they're just kind of knocking on the door to get a win. And wouldn't you know it? Actually, Uneducated Takes, my podcast mate, predicted this might be the game, and does this kind of change the trajectory of the season, do you think? Or
Yeah, I really think if the Vikings won this game, they probably will sneak into one of those wild card spots. But with the loss to the Lions, it's slim to none, even with a porous middle of the NFC.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you still, have two games against the Bears, which are very winnable, depending on.
I don't know, Soldier Field. It's not a place we win often.
Yeah, that is a good point. That is a good point. It depends, though. If Fields is playing. If Fields is not playing, I think the Vikings definitely have a shot to win. And if they don't, I mean, do you see? And see if you see what I'm doing there. Do you see Mike Zimmer coaching the Vikings beyond this year?
I think outlook isn't very good for Michael Zimmer. Michael, I don't know why I said that. Mike Zimmer. He can't really see himself, and that might be a good thing because if he looks too far ahead, he's not going to be happy.
Well, I'm sure you call him Michael because he's probably in trouble with everyone but his mom.
That's it, Michael.
You're out of here, Michael.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I thought Kirk was going to save him again, but his 2-minute defense was once again failed the team for the eighth time in 8 tries.
Is that really the biggest thing? Kind of, that the last parts of it, all the games.
Yeah, it's the 2 minutes before half. The Vikings have given up 72 points, which is just ridiculous. The Bears probably haven't given up that the entire year with their defense.
I'd have to look. I've been watching the season with my hands over my eyes mostly, but
yeah.
But yeah, so speaking of kind of doing that, sometimes when I'm at a going on a roller coaster, you just kind of scared. This whole Kirk Coaster and what's it been like as a Vikings fan, and do you see him being with the team beyond this year?
Well, if you check out my timeline, I'm a big Kirk guy. Mm-hmm. I defend him against everybody. I think what he's done this year, it's been his best season that he's had so far. 2018, I thought he wasn't great, but since then, I feel like he's done what we wanted him to do with the Minnesota Vikings, and he's been let down repeatedly by his team. The Minnesota Vikings have scored 27 or more points 18 times in the last 2 seasons, which is tied with the Buffalo Bills and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the most in the NFL. And they're 10-8 in those games. The Bills and Bucs have a combined 3 losses in those games. So a lot cannot be put on what Kirk Cousins has done. He's put up a near MVP type of season in a season where there haven't been really any clear-cut MVPs. I'm a big fan of I don't think QB wins is a stat. We've gotten a lot of arguments about that in group chats or on the timeline, but that's just what I believe.
What do you think about the leadership that he brings to the table? Is it enough, or?
Well, I think if he had Belichick, everyone would call him a winner. But he has Michael Zimmer, and he's had the Washington football team backing him for most of his career, which are not easy places to win. So I think he's got enough to win, for sure. There's been way worse quarterbacks that have. Nick Foles went on a run. Eli Manning. Mm-hmm. I know that's controversial, but Eli Manning was not a good quarterback. He's not as good as Kirk Cousins has been. And he won 2 I want to say.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
One of
against
them was against my boy Randy Moss, and I was not happy.
oh, that's right. That messing up the perfect season.
Yep.
Speaking of, you have Zimmer, letting the team down. Is the defense doing that as well? I mean, there have been a lot of injuries, and I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah, with Danielle Hunter out, that's tough on the defense. I think they were 9th in EPA before he got injured, and then after he's been injured, they're 30th. So the pass rush has fallen off a cliff, and then obviously with the mental health struggles with Everson Griffin, that they've lost both defensive ends. They had both defensive tackles out against the 49ers, a team that just would run us to the ground, and that's exactly what happened. I personally didn't think we would win that game. I hoped we would. But with 4 defensive linemen out, the chances are not great against a team that's just going to pound the rock over and over and over.
Yeah, and you kind of look at some of those other players, who are some of the other players that maybe you'd like to see more of from the defense as well?
Well, who would I like to see more of? Even the younger players haven't shown too much. We have a good safety, a rookie safety, which I can't even think of his name right now, but he's looked pretty good out there. Really, I think as far as defensive stalwarts, it's Danielle Hunter, who's been injured. It's Kendricks, and then it's Harrison Smith, and he's slowed down a little bit this year as well. I don't know how much your co-conspire has talked about him, but he's still pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much potential there on the defense. I mean, in the past, there's been a lot. Harrison Smith has kind of been good in the past, and he kind of fallen off a little bit too, like overall.
Yeah, I think he's slowed down a little bit. Both actually, Kendricks had an amazing 2 last years with this team, and he's still been amazing this year. But I've noticed a little bit of decline even there. But that could be chalked up to circumstance and the ebbs and flows of playing the position, because he's still great. He's still the best player on the team, or on the defense for sure. But Harrison Smith, I feel like, has fallen off a little bit. There's been a couple times where he just hasn't quite got to a place where in the past you'd be like, oh, he knocks that down, or he hits that guy and jars the ball loose. So I feel like he's slowing down slightly, and we did just give him an extension, so we'll see what happens with that.
It's always interesting kind of what happens with contracts and, players and, obviously playing, up to their potential and maybe slowing a little bit down after they get the big money. You just never know.
Yeah. And I'm not blaming him. He's still the best player in the secondary. Patrick Peterson was actually playing well with us too, but then he got injured and had COVID.
And I think he's going to be, at least he's off the list. He may be back this week.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, speaking of one of the groups that has, been a bright spot over the last couple of years, the receivers. I mean, I think Thielen may be out this week. But with Thielen and Jefferson, I mean, that's probably one of the top wide receiving combos in the league, isn't it?
Yeah, if you look at PFF grades, it is the top duo in the league. Thielen doesn't catch as many yards or passes anymore, but he's still, every time we get to the end zone, it's Thielen. Everybody jokes that there's a touchdown regression coming because somebody can't score on that percentage of their catches, but he does every year. I think he still leads the league this year. I'd have to double check.
And I just saw. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The Vikings actually got a third receiver this year in KJ Osborne, who's been tearing it up. Which, if we had Irv Smith, this offense would be a juggernaut. We go to the tight end so often, and we just have nobody that can gain any real separation on routes. And when I was watching the offseason, Irv Smith Jr. was the man. He was probably one of the best players, if not the best player on the offense. So that was disappointing as well.
Well, yeah, and I actually ended up picking up Irv Smith in Dynasty League, and unfortunately he got hurt, but hopefully next year he'll do well. And we'll get to the tight ends in a second. I wanted to ask one question about how does Amir Smith-Marset look? I'm an Iowa guy, and he was amazing at Iowa. Is he gonna getting more chances to see the field, or is he kind of regressing?
No, he started the year off as the kick returner. It didn't go super well, but I think he had some potential there. But now we have a new guy Ngakoue, who's just amazing as a kick returner. But he's actually been inactive over the last few weeks. He showed a lot of promise in the offseason, and I was really excited to see him in the preseason, but then all of the Vikings backup quarterbacks couldn't throw the ball. So it was one of those, he looked like he was getting open to me when I was down there at the Broncos game, and there was no chance. Like, he was looked off immediately. It was checked down. It was
really
super inaccurate pass. So we haven't been able to see much from him. I'm hoping that he can grow as Osborne did this year. And he would be number 5 on the depth chart behind Osborne and CD Westbrook. There we go. Couldn't think of his name for a second.
Yeah, former Jaguar.
Yeah, and he's a really fast guy, but he hasn't really been able to do anything with this offense. We've either tried to throw those check down screens on 3rd and long to him, and he's been hit or blown up immediately, or we've tried to throw it deep a few times, and we haven't connected once.
Yeah, when you look at that receiving core, it's really deep. I mean, and if you have Kirk having a great season, the injuries have been difficult, and you talked about Irv Smith Jr. I mean, him being a really important part of the offense, and with the Vikings, the tight end has been very important. Has Conklin been kind of enough, or what is his role going to be once Irv Smith Jr. comes back next year?
I think he would be the number 2 tight end, and I think he's a decent number 2 tight end, but as the number 1, he gets a lot of targets, and Kirk is super accurate, which works for him. That's probably one of Kirk's biggest strengths is his accuracy, and Conklin can catch the ball, but I don't know that he's a natural hands catcher. I've seen the ball knocked away quite a few times, and he just doesn't gain a lot of separation on a lot of these routes, but if it's zone, you can hit him. He's certainly serviceable. He's been better than the guy we got from the Jets, Herndon.
Herndon.
4th round pick and a 6th swap.
Yeah, Conklin more kind of better at the blocking as well.
Actually, he is a good blocker, but Irv Smith Jr. is such a good blocker. You wouldn't believe how well he blocks. Last year, Irv Smith was the number 2 tight end behind Rudolph, and honestly, every time that I would watch the tape, it was Irv Smith Jr. making an amazing block. And you're like, gosh, this guy, he looks like a wide receiver almost. He's not that thick. And he can put people on the ground. He's explosive. Conklin's a good blocker. Herndon's a good blocker. And, I just want more receiving threats. That's why we need Irv Smith back.
Were you surprised when they got rid of Rudolph?
No, I expected it. His production went down for the last 3 years now. He still was a threat in the red zone, but he wasn't getting many targets. And I think he still thought he had something to prove. So going to the New York Football Giants I had the Lions on my mind.
That's all right. Yeah.
Lions. Going to the Football Giants was a good move for him, but they're doing a little worse than the Vikings, I would say. They don't have a very good quarterback or anything.
No, well, he didn't have very good things to say about Zimmer either.
No. He didn't pay attention to the offense, which is, not good if he's putting all his attention to this defense that we have.
Absolutely. Well, talking about another strength that has been something, good for the Vikings in the past, Dalvin Cook, has been a stud. He's been injured, but you've had a very, very serviceable, a great backup, Madison. Yeah. And now you said you've got, is it Nwangwu?
Yeah. Ngakoue. That's tough to say. Ngakoue.
Yeah, I just kind of go with what Uneducated Take says. Yeah, so you've got, that's a really solid group of running backs. Talk about that group a little bit and, what that means to the offense as well, having the solid running game.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook has been a beast for the Vikings for a long time. I felt like he didn't have the best start to the season this year. He hasn't been breaking as many tackles, specifically ankle tackles. He's had a hard time with. And finding out that one shoulder was injured for at least part of this year, and then he injured the other shoulder, and now he's out. It explains why he's gone down with contact more, but he's somebody that's gotten better throughout the games as well. The Chargers game in particular, he had a terrible first half, But by the fourth quarter, he started to break tackles, and he made some huge plays down the stretch, which helped the Vikings stay in the season. We beat the Chargers, and then they went over and beat the Packers. And I don't remember what happened after that. I feel like the season hasn't, it's fine. But
you're going to be all right.
Yeah. I mean, those two games, that was our Super Bowl. That's what everyone's telling me.
Yeah.
Packers game was our Super Bowl. Hang the banner.
You got to hang the banner. Well,
yep.
Talking about, some of the, all these close losses. I mean, is that kind of really drained you as a fan and Vikings Twitter?
I wouldn't say it's trained Vikings Twitter. There's some serious meltdowns on there where we're not the toughest. You think we'd be a little tougher about it, but I wasn't even really upset about the Lions game, even though it kind of cost us the season. Early in the season, when we would lose those close games, the Arizona game after the missed field goal, I was like looking for something soft to throw. I got it. But the Lions game, I was like, I guarantee we left too much time on the clock. They're going to come down, and Jared Goff's going to somehow score, despite not being able to play football. He can't. If we just blitzed, he's one of the worst quarterbacks against the blitz. And then the Vikings rushed 3 every play except for one, when Harrison Smith probably chose to rush on his own. I don't think it was called. I think he just saw the opening and went.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was watching that and they talked about like how they weren't rushing very many and whether they should blitz or not, and it almost seemed too easy.
Yeah, it was. You rushed 3 and then you don't even. We finally had our 2 defensive tackles back, and we didn't play. I don't know that we played either of them on that drive. So we went down with 3, and one of them was a backup tackle. It's like, at least rotate them out if they're tired. They looked tired on the line. But I don't know what Zimmer was doing. I don't know what that final call was in the end zone, because our corner was 8 yards deep in the end zone. If you watch the Monday night game, they were right on the end zone line. But again, it's not a Zimmer masterclass, and I hate dissing him because I spent years being a stan of his defense. Like, these double A gap looks are incredible. These are everything I ever dreamed of. Like, I was like, I don't care what the offense does. I just want the defense to be the best in the league. And then I would see the Bears have an amazing defense, and I'm like, oh God, they need to have a bad game. just standing the defense, and now I'm like, Mike Zimmer's got to go.
Yeah, and when you look at the season, the last 2 games, I mean, those were important games. I mean, you got 5 games left in the season. This Pittsburgh game, I mean, if they lose this game, the season has to be pretty much over, right?
100%.
Because I mean, the Bears, I mean, those are going to be interesting. You said, the one at Soldier Field, that's going to be interesting, and the Rams and the Packers. I mean,
not easy games.
No. I mean, and so what are you realistically, predicting for the rest of the season?
Well, because of the Vikings, just the way they are, I think we're going to go 8-9. You got to give Kirk Cousins that 500 record, right? So I think the Vikings will go 8-9. They'll probably win against the Rams. Matt Stafford can't beat us. He never does.
Right.
I hope. That's my goal. Although Cooper Kupp is going to just destroy. Nobody can guard that guy.
They can't, right? Well, yeah, I mean, is Harrison Smith going to be on him, or
Cooper Kupp? I'm guessing it would be Alexander. Mackenzie Alexander, because he'll probably be in the slot most of all. And Alexander, somebody I was wrong about. I was probably most excited about that pickup for free agency because he's been so good in the slot for us in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second half of this season, I don't know what happened, but he's fallen off a cliff. I think he's PFF's like 113th ranked cornerback. And then we got Bashad Breeland out there, who is even worse. I'm sure you've seen some highlights, but he gets turned around when receivers don't even make cuts. And you're like, all right.
That's happening, right? Well,
and
yeah,
he goes on Twitter and he argues with the fans and says, keep that same energy. Well, I was hoping he would change his energy a little bit, like turn it up. Hasn't happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, and so you look at the schedule. I mean, what, they're 5-6 right now? Is that?
Is that right?
1, 2, 3, 4,
5 and
5,
7, I
6,
think.
7. 5 and 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
5 and 7. And yeah, so they've got, realistically, they at least split with the Bears.
Yeah.
And so, 6 and 8.
Yep.
They're going to lose at Green Bay, right?
I think so. I'd prefer if they didn't, especially with Green Bay fans just losing their mind after that first game.
Oh,
I could see that happening again. I would love if that happened one more time. That might save the season for me.
Absolutely.
Well, he lost to a team that lost to Detroit twice. Come on.
Yep. So that's 6 and 9, and the other two games Pittsburgh and the Rams. So
I'm saying they beat Pittsburgh. I'm not confident, but I'll say they beat Pittsburgh, and then they beat the Rams because we can't lose to Matt Stafford.
Yeah. So that's 8 and 9.
I've argued against Matt Stafford way too many times for him to beat the Vikings.
Yeah, he, and it's interesting, connection to the Vikings. He looked like, oh gosh, what was the former quarterback of the Rams, and I believe he was on the Vikings for a little bit. Sam, can't think of his last name right now.
Bradford?
Yeah, was he on the Vikings?
Yep.
He
was on the Vikings. We gave up a first-round pick, and then he got injured in the second game.
So there was one game where Stafford looked exactly like him, and I'm like, oh, that's just not a good look. And it's so interesting that the Rams, the quarterback is such an important part of a team. Kirk Cousins, I believe he'll probably be with the Vikings next year. I mean, with 8 and 9 record, 7 and 10, whatever. Is that enough? To save Zimmer's job? I know the fans don't want him there, but is that enough to save his job?
I don't think there's any way based on what we've seen this season with Zimmer's defense. Zimmer got everybody he wanted in free agency this year. They went out, they got a big defensive tackle. They brought their linebacker back. They got Hunter on a new deal. They brought in a new safety. They did everything they could to improve the defense and bring it back. And honestly, I thought the defense was going to be borderline top 10. And I think a lot of people did. Maybe that was my bias showing, but I was ready for a good defense. I was ready for the defense to be better than the offense because my biggest concern going into the year was Clint Kubiak. He hadn't called plays ever in his life except for preseason games, and he didn't tell us which games those were. So I was like,
oh, wow.
This isn't going to be good. And honestly, Clint hasn't been great, but I mean, it's his first year compared to Zimmer's 8th, and Zimmer's the one that chose to bring him on as the offensive coordinator. So if not Zimmer, then who might be a good fit? With look at the offensive firepower. Would you want a more offensive coach, or I mean, with Zimmer you had the defensive coach, but it hasn't really worked out. I don't know. Like who's the offensive coordinator in Buffalo?
Brian Daboll, and I was listening to interesting bringing it up. I was listening to Chicago sports radio, and Hub Arkish was talking about him, and he said that he kind of obviously the Bears, they get rid of their coach, he would be the flavor of the month, but he has not. Hub Harkish was saying that he has not done as much with that offense, especially in the game against New England, just to really do enough to really be head coach material. So that'll be interesting. So but that would be a name that you'd like.
Yeah, that's just a name that stands out to me, like thinking ahead. I'd have to look into it, and I know I'm going to look into it all off season, but I haven't dove in yet. And I know he doesn't run the ball very much, and with Zimmer's run the ball philosophy, pass first offense might not be the worst thing. Like, I feel Justin Jefferson is probably the best player on the offense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
More the way he beats single coverage every time. They keep moving him around like that. I mean, I wouldn't mind to see what a Buffalo style offense would look like with him and with Thielen and with Osborne and even your guy, Marset. Like,
yeah.
All of a sudden with Buffalo, we're going wide and we're going to get Marset in there. we'll see what he can do with his speed.
That is a good point. So yeah, but an offensive coach really kind of would be the hope though there.
Yeah, and that's weird because I told you I stand the defense for years, but I'm ready for something different. And I don't know what's going to win. You know, being a Minnesota fan, we never quite got there. I don't know how to get there.
Hey, I've only been there once, so
yeah,
I still have the Super Bowl Shuffle VHS to prove it. So
nice.
But yeah, I mean, there really are a lot of good pieces, in Minnesota when you think about it. Even with the kicker, I mean, Uneducated Takes was pounding the drum for Greg Joseph, and so I'm like, I have him in most of my fantasy leagues, and he's been decent, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been up and down. He's missed a few too many extra points that have come back to bite the Minnesota Vikings this year.
Okay, so that's been hard too. Yeah.
With the Vikings' luck at kicker, I wouldn't mind seeing him try to grow a little bit longer, for sure.
Yeah.
Unless we can get Justin Tucker. I'd give up a first for Tucker. We might win some games then. I think wins is a Justin Tucker stat, honestly.
It really is when you look at it with how, and especially with all of the close losses for the Vikings. And speaking of kind of like growing into the future, like what are some draft needs that you see for the Vikings going into the 2022 draft?
People won't like this because we always draft this position, but corner.
Yeah.
The Vikings need a corner again. We might not have Patrick Peterson. Breland has been awful. The Needle, Cam Dantzler, who I loved last year, has kind of fallen out of favor, at least with Zimmer, ever since his off-season trip to Disney World. I don't know if you heard about that. Yeah, he skipped a day of OTAs to go to Disney World or Disneyland, and then kind of fell out of the rotation.
That's so interesting.
The Broncos game didn't help. He had a terrible preseason Broncos game, so it might have been that, but it was a combination of the two, I'd say. So corner would be the number one need. Interior offensive line struggles. It seems like it's that every single season. You don't want to draft them too high usually, but if there's a stud there, for sure. I would go best player available no matter what they are, because just watching what Dallas has done this year with their rookies, and gosh, I would love a guy like that on the Vikings.
And do you trust the front office to kind of draft and everything right now?
I like Spielman. He's had some misses, but everybody does. He's also he has Justin Jefferson, who fell into his lap. This year with Darisaw, he traded back and still got the guy he wanted. Osborne, Diggs, Thielen. He's found all these late wide receivers that have tore it up in Minnesota. He makes some mistakes. Like every time we have a starter go down in the preseason, he seems to make some kind of trade to try to get a guy to replace him, and it never works out.
Darisaw's been all right. Hasn't he been?
Yeah. Darisaw has been really good when he's healthy.
He
missed the first half of the season, and we had Rashad Hill at left tackle, who last year was serviceable, but this year was getting bull rushed into oblivion repeatedly. I'll pop up some links if you want to see him get crushed. Darisaw, he doesn't look like he has the fastest feet, maybe not the best technique, but if he gets a hold of somebody, there's no way they're going to get to the quarterback. He's super strong for being such a young kid. There was a play just last week or 2 weeks ago now where he took, why can't I think of the player? Against the 49ers, he took, I keep thinking of Myles Garrett, but their defensive end.
Bosa.
They say, Bosa, who gets held every play, they say.
Yeah.
He got a shove on him, and he knocked him straight back onto the ground. Bosa did a nice little roll, and I was like, yeah, this guy's got something. Hopefully not another Khalil.
Right.
One good season and then fell off a cliff.
Well, speaking of, I hate to do this to you, sometimes getting in the playoffs and falling off a cliff. How far away from the Super Bowl are the Vikings as a franchise, do you think?
Gosh, outlook does not look good. That's what I would say. The defense doesn't have enough talent right now on really anywhere. Maybe defensive line is pretty good, but they haven't been able to stop the run, and they haven't been able to get enough. They get a lot of sacks, so that's good, but they just can't stop anything. especially in 2-minute drills.
So
the offense is pretty good too, but the play calling is so bad. We need a complete overhaul there. You watch other teams and you're like, this is how it's supposed to look. It's supposed to look smooth. And then you get the Vikings where they throw the ball almost every time at the start of the drive on first down. And then second down and long, it's usually like 2nd and 9 or whatever it is. It's a run every single time. And then 3rd and long, they have to either make a great play or it's 3 and out. And people are like, well, there's too many 3 and outs. Cousins needs less 3 and outs. When we're running on 2nd and 12, it's just giving up a down. It's forfeiting 2nd down almost every time, especially with our run blocking this year. Dalvin Cook's pretty good, but if the guys up front don't do their job, we need to throw the ball.
It's so interesting how important coaching is. I mean, you looked at the Monday night game, the Bills versus the Patriots, and now they threw it 3 times, and the Patriots still won. And that's the coaching. How a lot of these teams are really close. I mean, the Vikings have been really close in so many games. You have a good coach that can really strategize and use the strengths of his team that really can kind of get them over the hump. I mean, you're really watching this with Belichick, and he knew that it was going to be a windy game, but he went into it with this strategy, and he didn't waver. And I mean, they got close to losing, but they didn't, and so you look at Zimmer. I mean, Zimmer had a good start to his career with the Vikings, didn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
2017, that defense that Zimmer orchestrated was beautiful. It was so fun to watch. And he always let his offensive coordinators do what they needed to do. That's why a couple of them have gotten fired or quit midseason, but other ones have been promoted and moved. Stefanski to Cleveland, Shermer to the New York Football Giants. And these guys get a gig because Zimmer lets them showcase what they need to do. The problem is he can't take over if need be, and his defense has fallen off a cliff. That's the reality.
Yeah, and you look at it, I spent about 10 years in Minnesota, and got a chance to go to a few of the training camps. And being a Bears fan, it's tough to root for the Vikings, but I have a lot of friends back in Minnesota that we give a hard time. And actually, I'm bringing my kids to the January game for their first ever NFL game, so I'm excited for that. I'm excited for them to see the Vikings and Bears, and although it probably won't be a lot to play for either team, but
draft position game. Let's go.
Well, and with the Bears, they don't even have a first round draft pick.
Oh, that's right. New York has it.
They do. But with that, I am glad that they've got a quarterback. I think that they can build upon. When you look at Kirk Cousins, if they have a decent defense, if they have the right coach, is he the quarterback that could get them to the Super Bowl, or is he just kind of maybe past his prime?
Well, as I said, this has been Kirk's best season of his career. Honestly, I thought the Dallas game, he wasn't great, but outside of that, and maybe the second half of the 49ers game, he's had an incredible season, and he seems like he's getting better. So I think if you put the right pieces around him, which you can say for a lot of quarterbacks, I feel like in general, Kirk is kind of around that 9 to 12 range in quarter. But this year, he's caught lightning in a bottle. Unfortunately, the Vikings have caught lightning in a bottle in the opposite way. I think he could. Do I think he does? No. Favre didn't.
Right.
Culpepper didn't. Tarkington didn't. Tommy Kramer didn't. We've had a lot of pretty good quarterbacks in Minnesota that haven't been able to do it. Jeff George didn't. That's my boy.
Oh, yeah, Jeff George. What would that mean to the Vikings to get to the Super Bowl?
That'd be you saw what happened with the reaction to the Minneapolis Miracle.
Oh, yeah.
With all those. I feel like that's what it would be like in Minnesota for the entire week. I don't think I could go to work. I never miss work. I don't think I could go to work. I would be on cloud 9.
Tell you, Yeah, I was in, Mankato, Minnesota, for the training camp and, those years with Favre, and the excitement was crazy,
Yeah,
and just to kind of feel the excitement, thought that was going to be the year. I can only
should have
imagine
been.
that. Yeah,
I blame officiating.
that was part
Blame
of
the
it.
refs.
Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. I definitely appreciate you coming on to talk the Vikings. And so everyone can find you where again?
Well, I'm on Twitter, YFZ as in zebra 84, and I've been on the Believe in Vikings podcast with Bryant McKinney and Dustin Baker a few times. So if you wanted to check that out, I recommend it.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely have some awesome Twitter posts as well. Definitely enjoy those. So,
Thank you, thank you.
oh,
And I had a lot of fun with this. This was cool. If you ever have a group thing and you need somebody, let me know.
absolutely. Thanks again. And once again, this has been NFL Updated Cover 2 series. Thanks again.